Today's gospel is all about what is happening under the bonnet. Have you watched the TV series The Sixth Commandment? The Thursday group was talking about that, so I watched it. It's a bit eerie. But it's based on the real-life story of Ben Field, a young person, a church warden, who also worked in a care home. His local diocese encouraged him to pursue training for the ordained ministry. But his true character was eventually exposed, and he was far from being a kind, religious person, despite his gentle exterior. So what was going on under the bonnet? What was going on in his heart? When he was charged with murder and attempted murder, he was asked why he had committed his crimes. And he said that he enjoyed having power over people and then gaslighting and degrading them. And he told the court that this gave him deep pleasure. Today, the gospel is all about what's under the bonnet. Matthew picks up right from where he left off last week, following the parable of the sower. And in this parable, Jesus provides a summary of human history. He's telling the people why things are and the way they are. Why is there evil in the world? Why do people suffer? Why do people mistreat each other? And he begins by saying that the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who planted good seeds in the field, and while everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed seeds among the wheat. What is Jesus actually trying to teach us here? In the broad sense, he's outlining and addressing the question at the heart of our human condition, because it grapples with the problem of good and evil in the world and with the good and evil acts in our lives. This is not a story of the origin of evil, but how can we handle its presence amongst us and within us? We know that Jesus is risen, he's ascended, he's glorified in heaven, but why doesn't he deliver completely from the world evil, suffering, and injustice? Because it's very tempting, isn't it, that we want to take matters into our own hands when we see injustice and hardship and people suffering at the hand of others. We're told in the gospel the enemy's motive was to harm the crop of the farmer. And his act will only come to evidence when it is mature. Only as good seed and weeds grow together, each other, before it is recognized. Of course, the owner team sought to act and remove the weeds, but he says, don't do that. In gathering the weeds, you uproot what is along with them. Let them both grow together, and at the harvest, the weeds can be safely separated from the good plants, because the roots were intertwined. His disciples were so curious about this spiritual meaning that they asked him to meet him and to explain this parable of the weeds. So this morning, like the disciples, we seek some meaning from this parable of Jesus. And the parable is all about what's happening under the bonnet. Firstly, the parable is a reminder of the peril of human judgment. Jesus tells his followers that they must tread very carefully in judging another person's heart, because we don't know what's going on under the bonnet. Sometimes we assign guilt and blame, and make assumptions based on the person's appearance, how they speak. We assign hidden motives behind people's words and actions that is not really there. And we can't see their hearts, their sufferings, their hidden crosses. We misjudge them. And when we judge them, we will, as Jesus says, be judged by God in doing so. Secondly, we have that the seed is planted in our lives and it takes time to mature. God needs to water it, to care for it, and to help us grow into mature spiritual plants. And most important, the seed needs to take roots and the grace of Jesus to make the seed grow and develop into a plant. But some weeds, Jesus says, may be mixed in with the good seeds in our lives. In all of us, there is a constant struggle against good and evil deeds. It's not me making it up. Paul says in Romans 7, I don't do the good I want to do. Instead, I do the evil I do not want to do. And thirdly, the mention of a harvest at the end of time. In the New Testament, something to be put on a fire, meant to be purified. On the last day, all of us will be purified in the presence of Jesus, so that we come before him as perfect human beings, saved and redeemed. And this encourages us to live lives that reveal the outcome of our relationship with Jesus. If we act exactly like everyone else, then what is Jesus doing in our lives? Or what are we listening to? Or who are we following? We need to live out what we preach. It's no good saying something and then doing another. And of course, when that plant is growing, we become more like Jesus intends us to be, because he wants us to be ingrained and rooted in him. Because Jesus calls us to be salt and light to our social circles and our community. Always responded to evil with good, hatred with love, doubt with trust, and despair with hope. We can be encouraged that Jesus speaks of the certainty of the harvest when all of us will go through that purification. Because as well as being the sower is also the grain of wheat in the ground. Through his death, the new life of God flowed into the world, and that overflowing new life has come into our lives. Jesus then assures us that the disciples, that the weeds of evil, injustice, will one day be no more. The truth is that only God and ourselves, you and me, will ever truly know what lies beneath our bonnets, what really is in our hearts. However, we do have a glimpse of what lies under the bonnet in our hearts. Jesus says just one sentence: you will know them by their fruits. Is the fruit of our life goodness or evil? Or I suspect both, but hopefully more good than evil.